welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters, with your questers, Josh and Dan. I am Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things nautical and quizzical, because we have a couple of emails to get to first. So if you have any questions for us, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
So, email number 1. We have a quick one here. It's a little quickie from Andy, and that rhymed on purpose. Hi, guys. Just listened to the Horror Constructs Part 3, and a question springs to mind. Can Life's Circle of One stop a horror netherwalking to you, or does it just block it on the physical plane?
It blocks both. I double-checked this with Morgan, but I thought it was probably the case that it would block both, because as a spell, it actually does exist in astral space as well as the physical. So it would provide an effective barrier to an astral horror trying to cross into the space.
Fair enough. Second question. Can it be used in reverse? Can you trap a horror in Life Circle of One once it is inside it? Thanks, Andy.
No, you can't trap a horror inside Life Circle of One. That is not what it's designed to do. For that, you need Restrain Horror.
Oh, there you go.
Which is a specific spell or talent that does that.
Well, if it's made to do that, then yeah, use that.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Life Circle of One prevents entry into it, but it does not do anything to prevent something that is inside from going out.
Fair.
There is an entirely separate power that does that.
Fair enough. Okay, we have a longer email here from Scott, or Ike. Whichever one. He goes by Ike Eichelhorns. Greetings, Dan and Josh. I'm on episode 64 today, still trudging through the weeds of the past. I loved the episode talking about Death's Sea, as I never had a chance to game master that far into bar save. But I have hope that my current group will. Great history on the sea, but you didn't share what effect or reason for binding death under a lava ocean. Where can I read more about this?
There is the legend about it in one of the early books, and I cannot now recall right off the top of my head. It would have made sense if I had actually thought to look that up.
No, because where I found it was in the Game Master's Compendium from Red Brick, and so everything was in there in one shot. So just look up Death's Sea in there if you have it.
Yeah, if you've got access to that. That would have come from somewhere else, and it's not in one of the Legends books because you've read all of those.
Most of those. No, it's not in those.
It might be in the actual Earthdawn Survival Guide.
I think you might be right.
Hold on. Yes. Yeah. The first edition Earthdawn Survival Guide, after which this podcast is named.
Absolutely.
Page 64.
Nicely done.
The Imprisonment of Death. That is where you would find it. It's a sort of like 2 pages, but yeah, essentially, at least according to that legend, Garland asked her fellow Passions to help her seal death away because they did not like that people died.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yeah, essentially.
There's more to it than that.
It's a much better explanation in there.
Yeah, like I said, it's like almost 2 pages in terms of what goes on. And it kind of addresses a little bit the consequences and whatnot. But of course, that is just the legend. The actual truth of what transpired and the reasons and stuff like that is ultimately left up to your own devices.
Yeah. And by the way, if you don't have that book, it's on FosseGames.com, correct?
Yes, it is available through the website at FosseGames.com.
Sure.
At the shop there. It is also available at Drive-Thru-RPG if for whatever reason you've already got sort of like a library built there and you just want to have everything all in one place.
Totally. Back to the email. A few episodes ago, you were looking for ideas on how to spread the word about ED. Not that ED, or the other one, and I had an idea. But I was waiting to get through the episodes to get on the current timeline to see if you had received a good idea. I can't wait that long, and since I'm getting old and forgetfulness comes with that, oh, wait, what was I saying? My group is still moving through Mists of Betrayal, as I only get to play once a month. I'm altering the story a bit and also converting it to 4th edition. There are some huge balance differences between the editions, but it is good, and we are having fun. However, my Orc Beastmaster player, Zai, desperately wants to train a pet. I ran him through a downtime adventure to get a Felux kit, nearly killed him so that he understood how dangerous that is, and then had Garisha from Haven take it from him since he didn't have a chance of taming it as a novice. So he agreed that he would get a hawk. But then I could not find a single stat for common creatures like that. Rabbit, squirrel, nothing. I looked at everything I have for 1st and 4th edition. So do those things not exist in bar save? Or what do I do for a novice beastmaster that is looking for a furry friend to cuddle at night?
So things like rabbits and whatnot, there aren't any stat blocks for them because they aren't something that would really end up with a stat block. There is not a hawk, but there is a falcon, I believe, as a stat in the...
Something like that.
Let me double check. You've got, like, a common domesticated cat.
Yeah.
You've got... There's an eagle, Game Masters 4th edition 279.
I thought there was an eagle in there somewhere.
There is also a falcon, 283. Either of those would be sufficient.
Your hawk.
You could just use the same stat block and say it's a hawk instead.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to use the falcon stat block as a hawk rather than the eagle.
Yeah.
But either would be fine.
You're not going to offend any falcons doing that, so.
I mean, the falcon is geared is a first circle opponent and the eagle is second. But yeah, I mean, what you can do is actually on the Earthdawn Guild on Facebook.
Yeah.
Somebody just recently, like today or yesterday, uploaded a file. It was a list of all of the suitable as animal companions. For a novice beastmaster, I would say it's fine to take anything that is like rated as a first or second circle
Opposition.
in opposition. Like if you look at their stat blocks, the regular creatures like that are all kind of mixed in with the other creatures in the GM's guide. Would not surprise me if there is also a list on Morgan's blog. Let me take a look. Because I know Morgan's got a bunch of lists.
Yeah.
Okay, he's got a list of the creatures by challenge rating. And so you can by category and then by circle within that. So if you go to Panda Gaming Grove and click on the creature list, it'll pull that up and it'll like show you all of the creatures and where they are listed. Any kind of novice, circle 1, circle 2 creature, all of those are listed there. And then you can look at the stat block where it points to where it is, some of which are actually on Morgan's blog there. And then if they're suitable as an animal companion, then you could use that. So yeah, that's something that you could do.
Look at that. 2 long lists of resources.
Yeah, and I know Morgan also has a list of creatures by habitat, but that won't really help you out any better in that regard. But yeah, those are places you could look to find a list, and then the list on Morgan's blog will give you the book and page number that the creature appears in so that you could look at the stat block in the description and see if it's suitable as an animal companion.
Cool. I like it. Back to the email. Oh yeah, ambassador programs. You could hire ambassadors to attend local or not too distant gaming conventions, game shops, etc., and help spread the greatness of Earthdawn, and why it is so much better than that Hasbro kitty toy, mainly because they don't know any better or have been given a better option. You could pay, air quotes, these ambassadors in tchotchkes, patches, whatsits, doodads, a signed headshot of EDSG podcasters, unique adventures that take an hour or 2 to run in a con setting, pre-made character sheets, basically a flyaway kit to spread the word, and they could earn points for each event they attend or store they visit, and eventually win enough points they could send away to FASA Games for the X-Ray Spectacles, Death's Sea Monkeys, or a special edition leather-bound rule book. Love you guys, still, but I'm still stuck in the past, so I hope you are still cool in the future. He's assuming we were cool to begin with, but we're podcasters, so we're going to go with that. Thank you, Scott. Very much so.
So we don't have any kind of formal street team or rewards program or anything like that is set up. We are, generally speaking, and I can't obviously address any specifics, but generally speaking, are happy to offer support to people who are looking to run games at conventions. Obviously, for conventions that we don't go to, there's not really much that we can do. But if you are not on the Discord, maybe join the FASA Games Discord.
Yeah.
And sort of ask there. The other possibility is that you could send an email to info@fasagames.com or something like that. if you are looking to do stuff at conventions or whatever, and that's something that the board would need to figure out in terms of what we're going to offer. Part of it is just in terms of the logistics of handling that and our available resources and time and so forth. So certainly if that is something that you or anybody else is interested in doing, absolutely feel free to reach out to us collectively. I can't promise anything, but it might be a case of if you don't already have it, we might be able to
sponsor,
like provide you with a PDF copy of one of the Legends of Barsave adventures or something like that for you to have as the adventure that you could run there if you don't already have it. I've got 4 or 5 really simple outlines for adventures, and if I can ever, like, on my desired list of things to do is to actually kind of write those up fully as adventures that people could grab and run. Most of those are slightly higher than like brand new First Circle stuff, but I tend to like make them novice tier. But yeah, if that is something that you or anybody else are interested in, reach out either through the contact form on the website, or through email, or on the Discord, and we will
get back to you.
See that gets into the appropriate hands. Like, if we get enough interest from people to do that, then that is going to make us a lot more likely to pursue that. But it also means that we would need to find somebody willing to sort of manage that, because none of us on the team really have the time to devote to managing that on top of everything else. So it would be kind of like a volunteer thing that maybe you do get some kind of swag reward or whatever. Again, no promises. I have no idea what is actually feasible or realistic in that sense. But
until there's a generated interest.
Until there's interest, there's not much sense in us trying to do something like that. And again, I recognize that we're in kind of the catch-22 where if we don't have people out there spreading the word and letting people know about it, then people aren't going to know about it and be interested in it. And that whole kind of marketing situation.
Yeah, it's the hand that feeds and all that fun stuff. So even better. So thank you, Scott, for that.
Yes.
Looking forward to hearing from you on that version, or if you're going to run something at a convention, man, let us know how it goes. By all means, keep spreading the word. So last email. Hello, Dan, and hello, Josh. I've been working on creating a Kitsulami-specific school for tail dancers. I've based it off of the description of the Death Wings in the 3rd edition write-up for the Tail Dancer discipline in Name Givers of Barsave. In working on it, however, I noted there is no 4th edition update to the gliding rules for Kitsulami characters, at least not that I can find. Most other racially specific rules have been included in 4th edition through updated or new sourcebooks, Blood Elves in the Elven Nations, and Piecemeal Armor in the Companion, or were included in the Player's Guide, normal movement for 8 foot to Strang while swimming. The rules for gliding skill that were originally introduced in Denizens of Earthdawn Volume 1 seemed to have changed very little through the various editions, really only the distances allowed changed, presumably to stay in line with movement rates. If you had a Kitsulami character in a game you were running, would you use the 3rd edition rules, Name Givers of Barsave, page 139, as the movement rates are the most similar to 4th edition? That version also references increases to horizontal distance allowed per unit, vertical distance of descent based on result level, which could easily be adjusted to be based on number of successes. So that is the question. Best, Jesse, a.k.a. Falal Katan Vros. So if you had a Kitsulami character in a game you were running, would you use 3rd edition rules out of the Name Givers of Barsave?
Yeah. So you couldn't find them in 4th edition because that is one that has not been updated or adapted. We haven't had a book that really addresses the Kitsulami at all. And because of the changes that were made to Tail Dancer in terms of making it a path, as opposed to something that was originally just a Kitsulami thing, we haven't really addressed them. They are a pretty small subpopulation available in a very limited area of Barsave. But honestly, in Champions Challenge, the webcomic done by Dawn, the main character, Bizette, in that is Kitsulami. So it would make sense perhaps for us to do that. Anyway, all of that aside, I went and looked at the rules in the 3rd edition Name Giver's book. The basic rules there are that normally, without any further tests, you can glide 1 hex horizontally for every hex of downward movement. And that's downward. So you, like, if you're starting from a higher point and going down, then you can sort of do that. A hex in 3rd edition is 2 yards. So I would just double that and convert that all to yards for movement. I would limit it to, if you're doing it in a combat situation, the amount that you move in any given round on that is limited by your movement. That's not to say that your total glide is limited by the movement, but that the Tiskrang movement rate is 12. If for some reason you were high enough that you could glide more than 12 yards, then it would take you multiple rounds to do that. There is also the skill, the gliding skill, which basically adds its rank to dexterity. And if you make a test, difficulty 5 seems fine. And yeah, increasing that by 1 yard per success rolled is a really easy transition to make. And I think barring some kind of update from us in the future, that is an absolutely wonderful place to start in terms of that. I would rate the gliding skill as a novice tier talent, as a novice tier skill, similar to like swimming or stuff like that. So you'd be looking at, 200 legend for rank 1 and going up from there. And the same restrictions, like you can't combine it with other things that might alter movement and whatnot. So yeah, stuff like that. I didn't see anything in the rule book that struck me as being especially problematic in terms of updating that way.
Fair. Perfectly adequate place to start. No problem with that whatsoever. So thank you one and all for emailing us. We appreciate all the questions we get because it helps everybody play the game better. So if you have one of your own, if you've never contacted us before, or you want to give us your 27th email, we'll take either one. edsgpodcast@gmail.com. There you are. On to our nautical portion of the show. This is, again, part 4 of our Serpent River deep dive. Haha, pun intended. This is House Ishkarat, or otherwise known as the House of the Wheel. Their identification is a red wheel on a white background, so they are in complete contrast to everybody else who's usually using like watercolors or greens for lizard skin. So this is completely red and white. It is vastly different from everybody else, so you should not be able to miss these at a distance. The House of Ishkarat dominates the north reach of the Serpent River, kind of where House Syrtis stops at Caer Idolon, and House Ishkarat is west of that all the way up to Iopos, pretty much. Yeah, and their Gadonia for House Ishkarat is an obsidian ritual dagger. So it's black glass and really pretty. There's a picture of it in the back of the Serpent River sourcebook as a actual item. And because they go all the way up to Iopos, they are closely allied with the Denairastas clan there as well. So that's just the introduction.
Yeah. One of the important things to note about House Ishkarat compared to the other 3 Aropagoi that we have discussed thus far on the show, Katenchin, Vestrimen, and Syrtis, House Ishkarat was unknown prior to the Scourge. There are some theories about where they originated from and how they might have been the result of villages in the north reach of the Serpent River banding together the same way that the other Aropagoi kind of originated. But there are no records of Ishkarat vessels or House Ishkarat prior to the Scourge. They showed up not long after the Scourge, and the early encounters with them were all sort of aggressive in nature. Anybody that sort of encountered them would get fired upon by their vessels. And so generally, there was not a whole lot that was known about them. And so they kind of appeared after the Scourge and started taking over the villages and settlements along the north reach of the Serpent, particularly up and around Lake Vors, which prior to the Scourge had traditionally been House Syrtis territory. And basically overtook the House Syrtis Nial Maratha. And
from Syrtis. Yeah.
wiped them out, more or less, just in terms of their aggressiveness and so forth.
Yeah, remember when we talked about House Syrtis and how the Maratha Niall left House Syrtis?
Well, they got kicked out of House Syrtis, despite the fact that they had been asking for help because of the aggression of House Ishkarat. The Grand Council, the House Chamber, whatever it's called, of House Syrtis, twiddled their thumbs and didn't do anything until it was too late, and then blamed them and said, "You're all kicked out, and none of you can ever be a full Gadoinia of the house anymore." Tough.
Mm-hmm. So it's your own fault that we didn't help you. Something like that. So yeah, Ishkarat, to Josh's point, their origins shrouded in mystery. It was never determined if there's an ancient Northreach village known as Elesco. They're not sure if Ishkarat was formed there or, to what Josh said, just a gathering of all the other villages. So not entirely sure. But yes, they did eventually spread east of Lake Vors and took over everything they could from Syrtis, because that's who else controls the other part of the Northreach. And the Iopos agents kind of rode the coattails of House Ishkarat as they were expanding and taking things over. And they used the influence of Ishkarat to therefore undermine the Throlic influence in all the villages that they came across as well. So Iopos really kind of played second fiddle to Ishkarat, letting Ishkarat be the bad guy. But then Iopos came and, did their dirty work afterwards as well. Syrtis did try negotiating with these, I don't know, lack of a better word, pirates, terrorists, take your pick. But Ishkarat had no desire to have their annexing takeover power or Bakshivas limited. So they have always sought full autonomy, and Ishkarat therefore freely, openly ignores the free trade compact.
Yes.
They're still doing what they want to do. They don't care what anybody else says.
So, being a new Europagoi, they were not involved really at all in the situation that resulted in the Free Trade Compact in the first place. And they were isolationist and so forth. And any time that anybody has tried to negotiate or work with them, they have performed skullduggery and double talk and betrayal and backstabbing, and basically taking that opportunity to be aggressive and to take advantage of perceived weakness and stuff like that. The Maratha Niall, thought that there was a chance for negotiation. The delegation from House Ishkarat arrived, and basically they were all swordmasters and took the leadership of the Maratha Niall hostage and held the fortress against the house until Ishkarat warships arrived, where they then proceeded to give everybody a sound drubbing and took over the Maratha's headquarters, and it is now sort of established as their base of operations currently.
Yeah, under the auspices of it was supposed to be a peace treaty signing. We'll see your peace treaty and take you hostage.
And that action finally spurred House Syrtis into action, and also concerned Bloodwood. Because if Ishkarat continued to expand east beyond Lake Vors, if they got to the mouth of the Mothingale River, then there would be nothing that would necessarily stop them from sailing their riverboats up into the Bloodwood and starting to wreak havoc there, and cutting off the one sort of trade outlet that the Bloodwood has down the Mothingale River.
Everywhere else.
And everything from there. Fortunately, House Ishkarat didn't really press their advantage at all after taking Lake Vors. And so there was enough time for the elves and House Syrtis to form an unlikely and surprising alliance to reinforce things at Eidolon and prevent further expansion. And they defeated House Ishkarat at a battle there, which is kind of, for now at least, put the kibosh on Ishkarat expansion, though they continue to sail their vessels anywhere that they like on the Serpent River, because while they do not adhere to the principles of the Free Trade Compact, their feeling is if we can sail vessels somewhere, then we can, and we will do what we want. And if we want to attack other vessels or raid villages or take bakshivas from whatever, then we're going to do it.
Yeah, we'll do it.
There's a lot of mystery and uncertainty about House Ishkarat, but these are very, very clearly bad guys in the sense that they are allied with the Denairastas, who, at least when they were initially introduced, they were also kind of mysterious and whatever, but are clearly now sort of a political and social and military, to a certain extent, threat to Barsave, their expansionist goals and whatnot. House Ishkarat is closely allied with them, and they don't generally adhere to the same norms that the other great houses on the Serpent do. They are much more of a villain bad guy faction than House Contention is, even though Contention has been set up as kind of a rival bad guy in a different aspect of things. More the sense in Contention that they have backed the wrong horse and been on the losing side of the geopolitical struggles of Barsave when it comes to the Theran Empire. And that has led them to be not in great shape, and areas that would have been valuable to them are no longer accessible, like the Iopos River, I think, is the one that flows alongside the Badlands.
Rings a bell.
The Iopos is either the one that flows alongside Travar or next to the Badlands.
No, you're right. Yeah, the Iopos River is between the Badlands and Travar.
What's the river that Travar is on? What's the other one? The Byros, right.
The Byros.
Right. So House Ishkarat is still, like, there has not been a lot of detail released about them.
No.
Their actual origins are shrouded in mystery, but I think the fact that they didn't really appear until after the Scourge gives some indication, in the same way that the Denairastas kind of came into power during the Scourge and really started to be the force that they were in the years after, indicates that there is probably a very close relationship between Ishkarat and the Denairastas, even more than you might expect just by the fact that, they're in the same area and they kind of work together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they're not as worshipful of the Denairastas as everybody else in Iopos. They see themselves on equal footing with the Denairastas, so they're kind of like, yeah, you're bad guys too. You're not better than us, because we do malfeasance and skullduggery as well, and we do it very well. So
their vessels are dangerous. Their crews are well trained.
Primarily sword masters, not just boatmen.
They sort of control the Lake Vors villages and extract high tribute from them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and loyalty. If you don't do what they say, if you don't agree with what they say, they will execute you. They're not
there is nothing really known about the Shivalahala of the Ishkarat, if they even have one.
Fair.
Again, because their background and whatnot is all very shrouded in mystery and whatnot. They're pretty cool. Like, in a bad guy kind of way. Like,
yeah, in that bad guy
These are the
way.
bloodthirsty pirates that you generally don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. Like, that's all of the information that's in the Serpent River, is that these guys kind of showed up.
Pretty much.
And they are vicious and dangerous, and only the more powerful Aropagoi warships really stand a chance fighting against them. And while they are mostly contained to the North Reach, you will have raiders and vessels that might be able to slip past Eidolon and get into lower stretches. But for the most part, they're somewhat contained.
Yeah, because what they do to do that is they regularly disguise their boats as independent factions, so they can travel that part of the Serpent River. So they're pretending that they're not Ishkarat when they're really Ishkarat. So that's more.
Yeah, the fact that they practice quite a bit of skullduggery and betrayal and whatnot is very similar to the way that Iopos and the Denairastas operate, which
Yeah.
leads me to an unconfirmed, but the way that I kind of view them in my head. Spoilers potentially here, like in terms of other information, where the Denairastas are offspring, descended from the Outcast. I suspect that there is a very strong connection between the Outcast and House Ishkarat as well. That House Ishkarat is another of the Outcast's pawns in his game against the other great dragons of Barsave. There's a third playing piece that he has as well, and that is the Firescale Trollmoot in the Skull Mountains, which is also in that area.
Region.
So that is my theory, that the Tiskrang and perhaps the leadership of House Ishkarat could very well be Tiskrang Dragonkin of the Outcast.
I could so see that being the Shiva Lahala.
Well, they may not even have a Shiva Lahala in that sense. That may be something that is sort of assumed because that's how Tiskrang work, but they could very well be that they are simply the villages or Tiskrang that were taken in by the Outcast and raised up and are as devoted to him, in a sense, as the Denairastas themselves are.
Yeah, totally. I can see that.
One other thing that is kind of interesting, and it's not addressed in the Serpent River book, but because of the connection between the Denairastas and House Ishkarat, is what it potentially means with regards to everything in the North Reach and the potential threat that could be posed if the canal that the Denairastas have been working on to connect Iopos itself to the Serpent, what that could mean if / when that gets completed, and what kind of increase in whatever threat level might take place when it comes to the combined powers of the Denairastas and Ishkarat.
Yeah, what kind of alliance is formed?
Well, again, I suspect that there is an alliance of sort already there. It's just a matter of what is it that is going to be allowed to be brought to bear, or is able to be brought to bear, with the Denairastas getting better access to the river that is not necessarily already available as a result of their alliance or their close relationship with House Ishkarat.
Yeah. Because when Ishkarat took over the Fortress Isle, they basically refortified that into a citadel now on Lake Vors, therefore causing the House Syrtis and the Elven High Court to build a fort at Caer Idolon to oppose the Ishkarat. So it's the escalating arms race now on the river as well. So they have 2 fortifications there. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot about the Fortress Isle. So Game Masters.
Yeah. Here's one other idea. And again, this is not confirmed. This may or may not be what was intended. But tying back to our first episode in this series talking about House Catention, remember that there were 2 entire Nials that vanished from House Catention during the Scourge. And it might be an interesting thing to explore if that's something you're interested in, the possibility that those Nials or one of those Nials were actually taken by the Outcast, and that's where House Ishkarat has come from.
Started from. Ooh, nice.
That's an idea. Again, not official, unconfirmed, but like connecting threads here with the other things.
No, we got some cool ideas.
That's not what I would do, because I have a different idea in terms of where they went and what happened to them. But that is an interesting idea that perhaps you could play with in terms of connections and the greater game that's going on at that higher level amongst the great dragons and whatnot.
Totally. No, I like both of those ideas. Take them and run. Yeah, so a little quick thing on Lake Vors. Since we've covered everybody else's main house, and the Fortress Isle doesn't have a whole lot, Lake Vors is otherwise known as Lake Deep. That's how it's translated. So Vors means deep in Tiskrang. It's 20 miles wide east to west and 1,000 feet deep at its center. Near the western shore is the massive rock pillar that is basically the foundation of the Fortress Isle itself. This used to be, to what Josh said, this used to be the Maratha Nial, but no other information is basically made about it. So since it is a pillar, a rock pillar, envision, for you game masters out there who need to create this, because I would create this myself, a vertical castle that's also a fortress that is balconies and parapets and cannons and so forth and so on. So this would be a vertical challenge instead of a horizontal challenge as far as any kind of infiltration is concerned. But that's just me. Otherwise, there is a town that they have built on the northern shore, and this is on the bluffs ahead of it. So basically it's a cliff face, and that is, the town's name is Axelesco, which means New Alesco, because supposedly one of the legends is they were formed from the original Northreach town, Alesco. You know, make of that what you will, but at least you've got a sense of setting in there. And like I said, I think this is where the Game Master gets to have a little fun in their creation of the Fortress Isle and what that looks like. And you get to play with the Shiva Lahala if there is one, if there's not one. You get to play with the legend of how they were created, because Josh has thrown out at least 2 good ideas. And if you've heard us talk all day tonight, there's at least 2 or 3 other ideas in there you can use yourself as to what their foundations are. But do you really need their foundations? Because these are a perfect bad guy for.
Right. These are going to definitely be something that is a danger that you will need to deal with, certainly in the Northreach of the Serpent. Like an added wrinkle in terms of the difficulty when it comes to dealing with northwestern Barsave and the control that the Denairastas and House Ishkarat have over that territory. The only friendly territory in there is Glenwood Deep and the Windlings of Glenwood Deep, who are who are strongly opposed to the Denairastas control, largely as a result of the general cultural sense that Windlings have of freedom and whatnot.
Yes.
And so there is guerrilla operations, or that is a place that folks who are operating in northwestern Barsave working against the Denairastas in some capacity, kind of like a Robin Hood in Sherwood Forest, perhaps, kind of situation. Maybe not quite the like rob from the rich, give to the poor, but just having that as a base of operations that you can
stand up to the man,
work against the tyranny in that area, and perhaps be able to retreat to it, because obviously the forest itself is not a place that the Descrying Riverboats are going to be able to go. And the Windmasters of Glenwood Deep and the various other adepts and individuals there probably make it very difficult for unwanted individuals to infiltrate very deep into the forest.
Totally. By the way, if anybody's curious or wants more information on the Ishkarat, there's a couple of adventure hooks and some uses of Ishkarat NPCs in the Empty Thrones campaign book. So I did look them up.
Yeah, there's not a lot in terms of that's given in terms of like background detail or origins or anything like that. Nope. But anything that's involving the Denairastas, especially if the Serpent River is involved, is going to involve the Ishkarat to some extent or other.
Yeah, so they're in there to use as foils, adventure hooks, or NPCs that are in the adventure you're using, whatever the case may be. So don't forget about them. They're there.
Yeah, and as mentioned, the Ishkarat like to disguise their vessels as independent traders to slip past the defenses at Eidolon and go cause potential problems elsewhere down the river.
So
they are not likely to go after any of the major settlements. Like they probably wouldn't go against the Cliff City.
No.
Or the Floating City or anything like that. But they would be the type that would certainly ambush trading vessels from the Aropagoi or raiding
small
villages or whatever to just generally cause problems along other stretches of the Serpent.
Absolutely. So they're just there to wreak havoc anywhere they can. So they could pop up, to Josh's point, anywhere along the Serpent in case you always wanted to have a foil. Use House Ishkarat. Why not? Because they won't announce their House Ishkarat, maybe at all, even if under fire.
Well, they probably would when they're actually doing their nefarious deeds. They're likely to be open about who they are. It's just they don't have a problem operating undercover in a sense to get to the place that they're going to cause their issues and then cause it and slip away.
Skedaddle. Yeah, fair enough. So, folks, if you have any questions for us about anything you've heard tonight about House Ishkarat, or you have a wonderful idea about anything we've posed as a possibility, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, or any other questions you have. Until next time, I think you should go wreak some havoc under the cover of night for your legend.